Sarah was the youngest of 4 daughters. She was a good, healthy youngster, except that at the age of 7, she started showing symptoms that my mother recognized as diabetes. The evening before Sarah's illness, Sarah was throwing up, not feeling well. So I went in and I comforted her and sort of settled her down for the night and went to bed. And when I woke next morning to get ready for work, I discovered Sarah on the bathroom floor, unconscious. My sister, who's a nurse, went with me in the ambulance.
Sarah arrived early in March 1975 in the emergency department. She was almost unconscious, she was in deep shock, and she required a great deal of emergency treatment just to get her upstairs to the intensive care.
And suddenly every phone in intensive care was ringing. We're bringing her up immediately, prepare an isolation room. She's extremely ill.
Sarah was known to some members of the staff of the hospital because she had diabetes. But this time she came in with a disease called meningococcal, and it can do devastating damage in a matter of minutes or hours.
She was developing so many complications, and in her case it affected the blood vessels in her arms and legs, which became deprived of oxygen, reaching the point where they were becoming cold and almost dead looking. And we knew we had a horrendous problem on our hands.
So she was about as sick as a child can get.
One of the doctors had heard of a drug that was being used to attack this. Somebody made some calls around and discovered that it was available in Montreal. So it was flown down within hours.
We felt that 2 things could help her. One was medication, and the other was the use of a recompression chamber. The Navy people at Shearwater said they would do anything they could to help us, but that we had to bring Sarah to them because the facilities they had were fixed and there was no way they could be moved. We told them her condition was far too critical and it was absolutely impossible to move her. I can recall going home around 6 o'clock feeling absolutely wiped and feeling very sad because I thought that Sarah would die that night.
Her father lived in California, and the doctors said, you better send for him, because they didn't think she was going to make it.
Following morning, as I came to work and approached the Children's Hospital, I suddenly thought there's an awful lot of activity going on around the hospital, the most extraordinary equipment and machinery and tons of people all walking around. And as I got closer, it began to dawn on me that what I was seeing was the recompression chamber. And the story of what took place that night is quite incredible.
Call came into the diving unit at around 9 p.m. The chief at that time was George Carnahan. George got the word to get the chamber and all the gear and a team over there as quickly as possible. So this particular chamber here was loaded on a low bed, and they loaded the compressors and the generators and things like that and all the associated equipment. By the time we got over there and got everything all set up, it was around 3 o'clock in the morning. And then we got the word from there that the first treatment for Sarah would be around 6 a.m.
She was to go into the chamber every 8 hours. And this then became a routine for the next 5 days or so. It was clear that Sarah's arms were recovering, and we knew she was going to regain the use of her arms. Her legs, however, did not respond to the treatment.
And finally, I remember we used to have meetings with all these various doctors in a little room with all of them around a table. And they told us that they were going to have to amputate. I went in to tell Sarah, and I didn't really have to tell her because she knew. If you lie there and look at your legs dying, and you have any kind of intelligence at all, you know that this is going to happen. And when I started to tell her, she knew. I think the hard part probably came for Sarah after the hospital, when she realized what was in store for her. or what she thought was in store for her, because what was really in store for her was an absolutely marvelous life. She had the amputations. She had to have skin grafts taken from her thighs on these stumps. There was a lot of care at that time. We had a hospital bed in the living room. There was one close friend of hers that would come and lift her out of her hospital bed and into a wading pool that we had in the kitchen for her to have her baths.
And I remember seeing her soon after she got her artificial legs, and really you would have a hard time believing that they weren't her own legs.
In her earlier years, she hated going to buy shoes because you have to try on shoes. So she'd find a pair that fit, and then she'd buy six pairs of the same. I'm not sure how Sarah got involved with the Flying Wheels. They were the wheelchair basketball team for Nova Scotia. When she was invited to try out or to play with them, she pretty soon became one of the boys on the team. She was the only woman on the team for quite a while.
To this day, she had the best shooting form I've ever seen with standing up or wheelchair. Her mechanics, shooting mechanics, and the way she approached the game were just letter perfect. She worked at it. She never missed a practice. She's the first one there, the last one to leave, and she dedicated herself to the game and her team.
The traditional opening of international athletic competitions, the parade of the athletes. They're people who've all overcome physical disabilities. People like Sarah Baker.
She was on the Canadian women's basketball team during the Pan Am Games at Dalplex, and an awful lot of Halifax people went to see those, and she was just very exciting as a basketball player. She won medals in javelin, discus, and swimming at the Olympics.
She decided she wanted to learn skiing, and her poor mother sort of said, well, oh, all right, dear, if you really must. So on one occasion she went with some friends on a T-bar, and no sooner had the T-bar taken off than Sarah knew she'd made a really awful mistake, because of the weight of her artificial legs, ski boots and skis, she knew she was going to lose her legs. So these poor shocked people behind her in the T-bar were suddenly hit by a set of flying legs and skis. But there again, Sarah could laugh about it, and went on to do everything that was possible for her to do with gusto.
Sarah decided she'd go down into New Zealand and visit her sisters, and that's when she met her future husband. She never came back. She cashed in her return ticket. Her boys are perfect. Sam's 5.5 and Bevan is 3.5. They've been here twice, and they're just delightful little blonde, beautiful kids with Kiwi accents. We certainly wanted her to have as normal a life as possible, but we didn't think it would be as normal as it has turned out to be, for obvious reasons.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Over the past couple of hours, our telethon viewers have seen two stories about what you went through. What a determined 15-year-old you must have been.
I had to be. I had no choice. And I think that's what happens to people that are faced with a disability or an illness or anything. There's no choice. You have to go with it and decide which way you're going to head. And yeah, I had such a huge family support that the direction I was going was only going to be ahead. They weren't going to let me go in any other direction.
Let me take you back to that time in the compression chamber. How much do you remember about that experience?
I do have recollections of that. There were some pictures which brought back memories too for me. One of the things I remember is thinking that I was actually going under the water, because I thought it was like a submarine I was going into. And I remember the beautiful cold oxygen air that just felt so good, and wonderful cold apple juice that was felt so good because I was so dry.
Sarah, your mother says that when she went in to tell you that your legs were going to have to be amputated, somehow you already knew. What went through your mind?
Well, I knew because I could see that they were very black, very, very dark with the gangrene. And I knew that I couldn't move those toes or feet, and that there's no way that color, that look, that damage that I could see on them was going to go away. So it wasn't a shock to me.
Were you thinking about the long term at that moment?
No, not at all. I was thinking about how this girl was going to get a date with no feet. I didn't have any long-term worries at that stage. It was very much not self-centered, but thinking about how I was going to get on as a teenager without my legs.
Well, Sarah, not only did you overcome that extremely difficult situation and live through that traumatic ordeal, but you went on to achieve such extraordinary successes in sports, from Pan Am basketball to the Olympics. What gave you that will to overcome, to excel?
It was fun for me. It was a huge social life for me. The whole group of people that I was able to join were like I was, and they all had disabilities. And one of the things I think you go through when you first have a disability is that you feel like you're the only one. And when I joined this group of people that had all similar problems, I felt like they were family, and I wanted to be around them. I didn't actually want to be with people that made me feel different. And so I just joined in so wholeheartedly. I was very athletic before I lost my legs, so it was really natural for me to want to get involved again in sport. And there in Nova Scotia, they had a really good setup all ready and waiting for me to join in, and I just felt, this is where I want to be, and so yeah, it was great.
So, Sarah, bring us up to date on your life now. What are you doing in New Zealand?
Well, I'm a full-time mother. I have two sons, Sam and Bevan. One is 5 and one is 3. One's just started school, and the 3-year-old is home with me. And my life is very full of taking care of them, getting involved in lots of activities in this little country area where we are, making sure that they have busy and interesting lives, because we are in a rural area, so you have to really seek out activities for them and friendships. And I'm actually just about to start a part-time job as an early childhood educator in this area, in the Reefton and Merriwoody area, getting a language group going for 3 and 4-year-olds.
And you work on your farm as well?
No, I help on the farm. This is a big Landcorp government-owned farm. It's 6,000 acres, and it's staffed by 5 or 6 people. But my husband is actually the manager of the farm, and I do what I can.
Sarah, we're here tonight to support the IWK-Grace Health Center, and I'm wondering, in that light, what memories you have of the hospital and its staff?
Oh dear, I have really, really warm, wonderful memories of the hospital and the staff there. There were so many doctors at the time and nurses at the time that just really, really put themselves out for me and made me feel like I was definitely going to get better and I was going to be okay, and gave such huge support to my family and to me. There's so many of them. John Donaldson, I can remember Dr. Donaldson coming and playing chess with me. One of the doctors in the hospital coming and playing a game by my bedside and just chatting. And Dr. Morton, who had been my GP at the time, coming often and just coming and talking to me and to my family and making sure I had everything I needed. Eleanor Lindsay, she was such a neat nurse, and Sarah Matthews at the time. They were able to have some laughs with me. My birthday happened when we were in the intensive care unit, and they allowed a few more people into our room and let us make tacos and have a wonderful celebration because I was okay, and I would do anything for that group of people in that hospital.
Sarah, what words of encouragement can you offer to 15-year-olds and other children who are in the IWK-Grace right now, facing the sorts of challenges that you faced?
I guess I'd tell them for me, one of the most important things was to find some people that actually could understand what I was going through, and that meant everything to me, to be able to be amongst my kind, and maybe that's something that other people, I guess that people do that in support groups and that sort of thing, and yeah, I would recommend that sort of thing be encouraged.
Well, Sarah, I want you to know that when we watch stories about children during Telethon who are facing and overcoming adversity, we're often left to wonder what happens in their future. It's been so great to get up to date on your life and to see how well you've done. Your life is truly inspirational, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.